Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for part number 3 of daily number 396, where we learn to be a better gamer. It is part 3 of 4, where we're doing a survey of Mech, or Mech, as people from America say. In the first two parts, we just saw a lot of winning from the Mech point of view. But there's obviously a lot of losing that happens from the other side of things, and it's important that we highlight that as well. There's an individual who I have to give an extra special shout out to. His name is Techno. Now, when I asked people to submit me their replays of Mech against Protoss, there were not that many Protoss submissions. There were a ton of Terran submissions, and virtually everyone who submitted from the Terran point of view was a game of them winning in a really dominating fashion. Techno said, hey, I put together a replay pack of 20 games of me losing against Mech. I lose all of them. Here you go. What a badass, right? Like, he not only had the guts to send me 20 lost games against Mech, but also to lose 10 games and say, yeah, I'm going to keep trying and to keep losing, right? That is the most important thing to continuing to explore what works and what doesn't, is to have the, I don't want to say stubbornness, but more the perseverance to keep going. Techno, you are the man. A lot of these games from Techno are, I would describe as experimentations of openings. What you'll even note here is that Techno is teal and Artanis is in red, which means that Techno actually was playing custom games with a friend, and he has multiple custom games going on. Total badass. Really committed hard to trying to get some of these Mech openings to work. So, looks like he was typing. Yep, sorry about the lag. There we go. Ended up having a slightly off-time barracks and slightly off-time supply depot. But here comes the scout from Techno. Now, this is one thing that I want to point out right now. Boom. Here we go. What we're first exploring here in the first half of part 3 is when things can go wrong. And we're starting with openings. Techno is going to give us some openings that he's trying and things that don't work out so well. Techno is sending out a scout really early on. Very important law of scouting. Scout when you need to scout. More specifically, scout when there is a particular bit of information you are looking to pick up on with a planned response. Here's a couple of very simple examples. I am going to scout the Protoss at time X. If I see him with an expansion started, I know I can get away with just one bunker. If I see the Protoss with no expansion, I'm going to build 2 more bunkers. Why does this make sense to scout? Well, probably because you're dying to one base all-ins. And with that little bit of scouting, you get the info you need. From here, notice how Techno ends up getting into the base. He scouts it. What specifically would he be looking for by sending an SCV out so early? He's losing 40 minerals a minute with his scout worker not mining. 40 minerals a minute is a good chunk of cash. Hell, if he's scouting out there for 3 minutes, that's basically a free engineering bay that we just gave away. Gotta make sure your information is worth it. I'm not saying that this scout timing was necessarily bad. It just more looks like Techno probably won't do too much of a deviation with his build. For instance, now, I actually would say I like the idea of opening up with a reactored factory. This is kind of a big opening right at the start of the game. Our Hellions can get in there and drill and do some damage to an early expand. So maybe sending out a scout worker 3 to 4 food later would be a better idea. Okay, so we already know we're going Mech. What are some things that we would want? Well, Hellions seems like a good harassment. We're building ourselves a command center. Techno is basically treating this like a Terran versus Zerg. And by the way, oh, how important it is to note that right here, you see how he's at 130 minerals? If this scouting SCV was not scouting but was instead home mining, he would have 200 minerals, enough to start 2 Hellions. There's a difference between scouting and getting money and not. Boom. Boom. Cool. Following it up, Techno gets a starport. This looks very similar to that structure that we saw in the last couple of games, right? It's a 1-1-1 opening, but we're not building Banshee Tank Marine. We're building Banshee Thor Marine and getting upgrades and expanding. So far, so good. Techno's looking nice. He's going to get himself a medivac. And this is a point in time where I'm starting to feel the importance of getting a fast reactor barracks. Techno has all these Hellions here ready to do counterattacks. Now remember, what did we say about containment? These Hellions, in a sense, contain Protoss, because if Protoss moves out, we can counterattack and kill stuff off. That's the way that you should think of it. However, here is the big difference between talking in abstract language and talking in StarCraft language. Abstract language would say, I build Hellions because helps me contain him. So cool, I've contained him. Real StarCraft language is, if he moves out, you can counterattack and kill off probes and win as long as you can withstand his counter pressure. So here comes all these Hellions. Ugh. Oh god. Oh, Techno. Doing so much damage. Oh, Artanis. Oh god. And it looks like that medivac that we built to help do the drops. Woo-wee! Sneaks right on back. Looking so excellent. Oh yeah, look at the containment. The indirect containment we're doing. Artanis really can't afford to leave because he's going to lose so many probes. However, back home, we don't have a bunker yet. We have a grand total of 4 Marines, because we have only just now switched that reactor barracks. Let me back up 10 seconds to 8 minutes and 10. Notice that this has been our mixture of buildings right from the get-go. Alright, cool. We start to get our mech stuff started, and we immediately lose to some sort of counter pressure. This is a very frustrating moment when you're doing this in his base. He has 17 workers killed, and yet there's so many units at your front, you realize that you're totally screwed. This is one of these moments where, at a time like this, time like right back here, if you can state important concepts like early reactor barracks, getting Banshees up to help deal more damage, getting a bunker up, suddenly what is an indirect containment that ends up having a fail when there's a counterattack suddenly becomes a lot more solid. We're actually going to see a successful instance of this later with Trimaster versus White Ra. Let's go look at some other problems that you'll encounter in the opening. The opening actually looks really, really fragile in so many instances. It's so deceptive to see really good players just easily crush, because there's tons of stuff that they are beating that you don't even see. Like, for instance, if I build 3 bunkers, I might be beating a 4-gate. Wow, this guy's mad. If I build 3 bunkers and no 4-gate happens, it might be difficult to see that I'm safe versus a 4-gate, whether I'm assuring you that I can or not, right? But there's a lot of those that are going on, and we're seeing a lot of these from Techno. And it looks like G-Udge says, gosh, what the fuck, why do I play you so much? And Techno's like, well, I don't recognize your game. I guess I play a lot, and then says, got something new for you. Hope you enjoy it. Techno's the man. I love Techno. Techno is such a kick-ass badass, trying mechs so many times. Against practice partners, this is on the ladder. Kills off the probe. Stupid. Judge cursing at his dead probe. So I like this. Look at this much more delayed scout by Techno. This is his first move out. Love it. Much slower. Much slower. And here comes factory. Build a factory. Alright, cool. Scouting around here. Love this scout. Checking for an expansion. Building a bunker on the low ground. Alright, guys. Alright, guys. It's time to watch our Terran hero Techno be a total frickin' badass. There's the Stalker coming out. Dum da da dum da da dum da da dum. Going for the double Hellion build. Again, a way to indirectly contain a Protoss. Starport coming up right away. This is the same build that we saw last time, except earlier second gas, earlier Starport, later expansion. Love it. Look at this micro getting on in, lifting on up. Uh-oh, he's gonna get branked. Rallies the Hellions down before whipping around, repairing, and murdering with no damage. Look at that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, Techno looking good. Excellent. Fantastic. Beautiful. So Techno, He starts stim, which I actually think is an accident because he's going to cancel it in a second here. Alright, so he ends up moving up here. He sees, okay, absolutely nothing. I'm going to remove this tab. He sees an immortal, which is good because he knows that there's a robo coming up. He tries to swap these, and there, he's going for cloaked banshees. Now, why is this okay? Why is this okay to make cloaked banshees, even though you've seen robo? Because banshees help us contain him. He needs to stay back and have observers in defensive positions, which means we have more opportunity to expand. Excellent. Excelente. Damn it, switch to the stream. There we go. Ha 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 ha. But again, what happens? We're getting a lot of Hellions. It looks like a Warp Prism is incoming. This is the problem with some of these indirect contain issues. We can do a ton of damage, but we also suffer a ton of pain when these sorts of attacks end up coming in. We inadvertently don't repair the Banshee. And you're starting to see the increased importance of a reactored barracks with variety, helping us deal with all sorts of stuff that could be thrown at us. And Techno ends up barely losing after some ridiculous, crazy exchanges where he just does not quite have the energy. Techno with the cool game, bro. I'll stop it before he GG's and types out. There's a whole bunch of things that end up giving us problems, and we have to be really careful against them. And the reactored barracks, I think, is the real key in the opening stages. Reactored barracks and some aggression. What I actually want to watch some more of Techno's games, but there's a really long Trimaster White Raw game. Let's go ahead and hop into that one. Where is it? Yeah, getting it. Here we go. Bam! Oh, by the way, someone actually just said, how the hell is this mech? That's actually a really good question. Again, to reiterate the purpose of part 3. Techno was trying to go for mech eventually in all of these games, yet he died in the opening. The opening turns out to be the critical, difficult problem because you want to start getting a lot of factory units early on, just because you want a factory composition. But things like getting Hellions out allow you to stop some things, like a lot of Zealots, but not things like a lot of Stalkers or Immortal drops. Banshees allow you to contain against some things, but again, struggle with these drops. So we're trying to point out good openings versus bad openings and problems and struggles, and we saw some of those from Techno, and now we're going to see one from Trimaster. This game is going to have some struggles in the opening stages, a really good mid-game, and then a really terrible finish. Oh, just a really painful finish. Let's go ahead and pop that one up there at the top. Trimaster versus White Raw. So let's talk openings. One game that I wanted to show from Technos that I did not get the chance to do is to show a game of Void Rays waltzing right in and killing off our hero. So, again, the double reactor, or the reactor barracks, cannot emphasize enough. Here's going to be a slightly different game where we're not actually going to see a Banshee. We've seen Banshees in virtually every game that we've seen of Mech, and Trimaster is instead going to go barracks, expand, kill off this Vespene Geyser, and immediately double gas it up. Oh yeah. In a second, he's going to need to build a bunker, because White Raw will be able to come out with a Stalker and do some killing off of things. There we go. Here is the factory popping down. Everything seems pretty normal. No early double gas yet. If we get double gas, we don't really have a way to spend it because we have one frickin' factory. There's the reactor on the barracks, and I'm still a firm believer in the reactor barracks as a very solid opening. I think that it is versatile, can deal with a lot, blah 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 blah. But I still very much so think that other openings do have some possibilities. Right now, the one thing that I would be worried about for Trimaster is if White Raw did some sort of one base Void Ray. Fortunately, Trimaster can cross that possibility off. Trimaster is going for a fast Hellion drop. Notice the difference between Trimaster's play here and the big problem that we saw with Techno's play before. Notice the subtle differences. Non-stop bunker production. We see the 2 bunkers placed there at the front. We see a supply depot placed where there could be warp-ins from the low ground. Another supply depot placed where there could be warp-ins from the low ground. covers a good amount of problems. But here comes the droppity drop, and I think a Raven does plop down. Yeah, there it is. The Raven goes down. No Banshees, no Banshee opening. But Trimaster instantly plops down a lot of factories. I don't think that you can afford this in the long run. And I think that the economy management is going to come back to bite Trimaster. I'm going to switch back to his medivac point of view. Trying to do another very easy tactic. Hellions at the front and Hellions at the back. No problem. Oh god, he lined him up. Oh my gosh, everything is lining up, you guys. Oh. Oh. Did a pretty good job. Pretty damn good job, right? Trimaster is ahead. He's getting a whole bunch of factories with Tech Lab. He has a factory with a reactor. He has a Raven. He has a barracks. He's getting ghosts. Trimaster was telling me that a big issue that he personally has with Mech, or no, that he has a lot of big issues with Mech. He says it's really hard. It feels like really not so good. And I think Trimaster has great tactical instinct. If you watch his Terran versus Zerg, I mean, he even knocked out Idra at MLG. Very, very solid, aggressive player. But this is kind of an uncomfortable mixture, and it's weird to get a good mixture of factories. I think that 3 factories on 2 bases is more than enough. I think that you will spend all your money outright. So there's all this fun rearrangement. We see Trimaster think about building a command center, cannot quite commit to it. There's the blue flame coming down. And we see 1 round of units is going to pop out, but it's going to be pretty tough for him to get another round of units out. Reactored factory with 1 Hellion being produced out of it, and there's a ghost. And now these Hellions finish, and looks like we also wanted to get Cloak, you know, trying to do a little bit too much too soon. That's why I like the Terry game. Terry is a little bit more comfortable once he has small factory amount, gets Ghost, then takes this expansion. Still trying to drop. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that this is great. I think this is great. Going for these little drops. Seems reasonable. I'd be a little scared of Blink because I've seen a Twilight Council, but I think that generally trying to go for some harassment. Probably want to have 2 or 3 Hellions rather than 4 running all over the place. Checking for bases. All looks good.
Somebody, get me out of this mess.
But again, notice this little bit of bumpy macro. So far the opening has done some good. I had some concerns about other possible strategies, but pretty much eliminated by the scouting that we had at the front from this expand.
Research complete.
So Trimaster is in a clear lead. Again, look at the unit station. Well, the worker count's closer than I would have thought, but this is the reason that I think Trimaster is ahead. We can even see that reflected in the food count. Also, not that many tanks. And you need something to eat up a lot of damage while the tanks can deal a lot of damage. Generally, that's a Thor. Hellions die kind of fast. And I do think that Vikings are pretty important. I'm tempted to say that if your opponent is getting a lot of Colossi, you don't necessarily need to get a lot of Vikings, but I think that they can help. Trimaster, by getting no Thors and no Banshees, absolutely needs. I think he absolutely needs Vikings. So we see the Cloak going up, sniping the EMP. This looks good for him, right? I'm going to go to the everyone cam really fast here, just to show how unbelievably good it's turning out. 150 to 95. This I would describe as good for Trimaster. This is... Oh! Alright, Trimaster. Causing disaster. But now let's see some of the really brilliant things that White Rod does. White Rod is very, very behind. In pretty much any sense. He does not have that many workers. 36, 37 now. That's good. That's increasing. Our opponent Trimaster has just a ton of stuff. But I think Trimaster is going to fall victim to a very common... oh yeah, even killing that off. That's incredible. He's going to fall victim to a common issue that I think Terrans will experience a lot, is that you start playing it like a Terran versus Zerg rather than a Terran versus Protoss. Or, no, that's actually not the right way to say it. You play it out like you're going Marine Marauder rather than tanks as your core army. Tanks have to be still to do maximum damage. Obviously, getting things like the sensor tower is good. Leaving a High Templar in your base is probably less than good. But watch White Raw. Suddenly stops going for this Templar Colossus mixture. Starts going for a lot of Blink Stalkers. And as a bit of advice to every Protoss player out there, do not blink on top of tanks. Really be very careful. Keeping a spread like this, you can blink to like here to increase your spread, but look at what happens when you blink on top. Here's a bunch of tanks. Here's a blink. Now look at the health of the tanks. Okay, we have, looks like 7 tanks, and we have 12 stalkers. Watch their health. Falls really fast, right? Oh my god. Yeah, you cluster your own units up. Yeah, we lost 5 tanks, but we killed off 12 stalkers with pretty big ease. Yeah. Continuing to harass. Now this looks very Terran versus Zergi, or very Terran versus Protoss with Marine Maraudery. A lot of aggression. We kill off a base, we suddenly spring into a lot of aggression. I don't mind the idea of rallying to here and sieging up. We have another orbital command moving out to expand. But look at Ninja Ra. Here he comes, Ninja Ra. This is something that a lot of Protoss players should do. I strongly recommend doing exactly this. Hitting the Terran in a lot of places at once. Blinking up in the main, blinking back. We see Trimaster trying to reposition everything to hit these Stalkers. The instant these tanks siege up, the Blink Stalkers run. They don't siege up. White Ra wins a nice engagement. You want to have that mobility. Notice the Templar that were in the Warp Prison. Beautiful. This is not a planetary fortress. So suddenly, we have this once upon a time very aggressive Terran player, Trimaster, looking really, really just passive. I'm sure he's trying to do some cool stuff with the killing off of Probe, where he's getting up to 46. Obviously really good. Come on, White Raw, come on. White Raw, starting to pull ahead. Starting to pull ahead. Blink Stalkers heading on up. Come on, Alexei. Come on, we don't have all day. Yeah, that's right, he's going to blink into the main. Oh yeah. Huge blink into the main. Now, what units do you pull back? Yuck. I'll tell you what units you ordinarily would pull back, and that would be Banshees, to be able to deal with that. You can bring back Hellions and Banshees and be in pretty good shape. Maybe bring some Thors up, depending on how many units are there in the main. Starting to do some really easy harassment there. And then, oh, hitting down here with a super mobile army. Be really careful blinking into tanks, as you can see. But hey, cool, another blink there. In direct engagements, it's really, really rough. Colossi are pretty decent against siege tanks, but I like Colossi more because they can climb up and down cliffs. And look at this, just blinking all over the damn place. Trimaster should have some planetary fortresses spread through here. I don't even think it's necessarily bad to just plant a planetary fortress here if you feel like drops are coming in. Because you just don't want to be pulled and pushed all over the place. Suddenly, Trimaster, who once upon a time was on the verge of winning, is being pushed and pulled by Stalkers just because they're the most mobile unit. And White Rod blinking back in again. White Rod down here blinking in again. Not planetary fortresses, but orbital commands. I mean, you still would have problems if these were planetary fortresses, but at least you'd have more manageable problems. And White Rod is just going absolutely insane. Colossi, Templar, Immortals, Stalkers, and then in the final engagements, White Rod just starts picking places where the tanks are not. Were there planetary fortresses there, you could get into good position. Trimaster, interestingly, experiences a frustration that many players will experience. And I think that that is where we'll end part 3 before we step into part 4. Trimaster did some great tactics at the start. Trimaster did some beautiful aggression and pushing in the start, or in the mid game. So it's kind of a decent opening, a great mid game, but it was the late game where it felt very Marine Maraudery. If Marines and Marauders were in that situation, they would be just bouncing all over the place, being able to defend very, very well. But with Mech, it's much, much harder. Yeah, when we go into part number 4, that's right, first 4-part daily, boom. We go into part number 4. We're going to see an absolutely hilarious game that really highlights problems that both races will have. And we're going to finish with a very, very, very long Terran versus Protoss between Sterling and In Control. See you for part number 4 in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes.